Hey guys, tonight, we travel way back to a time when your worst Monday wasn't about emails or traffic, but freezing to death in the Alps while trying to follow a guy on an elephant. That's right. You're part of Hannibal's infamous march across the mountains, and spoiler alert, your boots are not up to the task. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is right now. Drop it in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge behind a war elephant. That sentence alone should make you question your life choices. But here you are. The year is 218 BC. You're in Hannibal's army, and your fearless leader has decided to do the unthinkable. Take an entire Carthaginian force, complete with cavalry African war elephants, and your very cold feet over the Alps to invade Italy from the north. Bold? Yes. Suicidal? Almost definitely. Snow crunches underfoot as you climb. The cold air whips your linen tunic, which in retrospect wasn't designed for high-altitude warfare. Around you, men cough through the altitude sickness, horses slip on icy ledges, and elephants trumpet anxiously at the cliffs. One wrong step could send you tumbling to the rocks below. You're hauling supplies bundled under a fur you borrowed, stole from a sleeping Numidian scout. The wind finds its way through the seams. It isn't just the terrain. Alpine tribes ambush you from the rocks above, pelting stones and arrows, while your comrades raise their shields and yell in a dozen dialects. Your commander says they're Gauls, but honestly, you can't tell. Everyone with a spear and a beard looks equally menacing right now. You fight back with freezing fingers and an aching stomach. You haven't had real food since the salted meat 4 days ago. And that was horse. Historians still argue whether Hannibal truly expected to survive this leg of the journey, or if it was sheer desperation. Either way, he keeps moving, climbing higher, always just ahead. You catch glimpses of him stoic, wrapped in Carthaginian indigo wool, mounted on one of the few elephants still standing. Some say he lost vision in one eye here from an infection. And honestly, that checks out. The cold gets into everything. At night, you huddle with your unit around a flickering fire. The wood is damp, the smoke choking. Someone tries to play a reed flute to boost morale, but it breaks halfway through a song. You laugh anyway because it's either that or cry. A nearby soldier claims to have seen ghost lights in the valley. You pretend not to be spooked, but you sleep with a hand on your dagger all the same. The elephants, if you're wondering, are having a rough time. About half have fallen, some from exhaustion. Some simply slipped and never stopped sliding. One even crushed a line of pack mules. Yet Hannibal insists on keeping the rest. They're more than war animals, they're symbols of power, of fear. No Roman has seen elephants in battle. Yet, as dawn breaks on your 7th day in the mountains, you finally reach the pass. From here, you can look down into the Italian plains. The view would be beautiful if your feet weren't bleeding. You stand shoulder to shoulder with frost-bitten comrades and realize somehow you've made it. You're not the same army that left Carthage. Out of the 50,000 who began, only about 26,000 remain. But those who do, you're forged. You've seen avalanches swallow whole squadrons. You've pulled a man's frozen arm from a rock like it was driftwood. You've eaten boiled bark. You've earned your place in legend. One of your fellow soldiers, a wiry guy from Iberia, whispers, "Rome doesn't know what's coming." You want to believe him. But right now, Rome feels like a rumor, a distant, sunlit city that surely must be prepared for whatever's left of you. Another soldier mutters about the elephants again. Bet the Romans think they're just big cows. That gets a chuckle. You're too tired for anything else. At this point, even your dreams are cold. You fall asleep with your helmet still on, curled like a child against a jagged boulder, and the only thing in your mind is warmth, sunshine, fire, soup. You wake to neither. Just another march down the other side. By the time you reach the lowlands, your legs feel like carved stone. You expect celebration, maybe a bath, a woman, a medal. Instead, Hannibal says one word forward, and you know that the real fight hasn't even started yet. You're not sure whether to feel dread or awe, but you do feel something strange pride. You've crossed the Alps. You're part of an army that will be spoken of for thousands of years. Granted, probably not by name, but hey, maybe one of your grandkids will tell a friend at a tavern that great-grandpa crossed the mountains with Hannibal. That's enough. The cold is behind you now. Ahead lies Rome, and you're bringing elephants. The air grows warmer as you descend from the Alps into the northern plains of Italy, and for the first time in weeks, your breath doesn't fog before your eyes. Your bones are still sore from the cold. Your boots are mostly held together with leather thongs and luck, but you can finally feel your fingers again. A few soldiers cheer when they see green fields below. You don't. You're too busy wondering what Rome will throw at you first. News travels faster than armies, especially when elephants are involved. The Romans know you're here now. You're no longer a phantom army marching through Gaul or a whisper in the mountains. You're a real exhausted, sunburned force sitting in their backyard. And they're coming to meet you. You pass through villages where people hide behind shutters terrified. Some offer bread and figs, unsure whether you're friend or plunderer. Others just flee. The language is strange to your ears, Latin rough and quick, but fear needs no translation. The elephants get most of the stares, of course. Children run after them until their mothers pull them away. One beast swings its trunk lazily, indifferent to the attention. The rest shuffle forward, weary but towering. Hannibal wastes no time. There's no long rest, no medals, no grand camp set up. He divides the army into parts, sends scouts in every direction, and drills you relentlessly. You're bone-tired, but when he tells you to stand in formation, you do. You've followed him this far. You'd follow him into Hades itself, and then the Roman legions arrive. They're not subtle. You hear the drums first, dull, thunderous, rhythmic, then the dust cloud, then the red. All that crimson fabric shimmering under the Italian sun like blood made solid. They move in lines like machines with metal glinting and standards high. You fought before, sure. But this is different. Rome isn't a tribe or a militia. Rome is an idea with armor and marching orders. You face them for the first time near the Ticinus River. A test, Hannibal calls it. He sends his cavalry, mostly Numidian light horse and Iberians, on agile mounts to harass the Roman front. You're not in that wave, but you watch from the rise above. The clash is brutal and fast. You see Roman riders follow the Numidians darting between their lines like wasps, luring them into traps. It's not a massive victory, but it's a start. Rome pulls back. Hannibal smiles. Not often, but when he does, it's the kind of smile that makes you wonder what plans are already blooming behind his eyes. You learn a new name, Publius Cornelius Scipio. He's the Roman consul who led the cavalry into the fray, and he's wounded, dragged off the field, they say, by his teenage son. That son, historians still argue whether he truly saved his father's life or was just nearby at the right moment. Either way, remember him. His name will come up again, Scipio Africanus. After Ticinus comes the Battle of the Trebia. This time you're in it. Hannibal has a trick up his sleeve, literally, if you count the frosty morning river as a sleeve. He baits the Romans into crossing the freezing waters before breakfast. Yes, before breakfast. You'd be angry too. The Romans, confident and overeager, splash into the river, their armor weighing them down, their fingers numb, before they even reach the other side. You, on the other hand, are warm-fed and already in formation. You watch the Romans stumble toward you blue-lipped and sluggish. And then Hannibal strikes. From behind a low ridge, your hidden comrades burst out, Libyan Celts and Spanish troops held in reserve. The Roman flanks collapse like overcooked barley cakes. You slam your spear into the shield of a Roman soldier and feel the shock run up your arm. He stumbles. You press forward. The field turns into mud and screams. When the dust settles, the Trebia River runs red. Thousands of Roman dead lie sprawled on the banks. Some say as many as 20,000. The surviving Romans flee in disarray. And Hannibal, he barely looks winded. After the battle, you help dig trenches for the wounded. The groans fill the air like cicadas in summer. A fellow soldier beside you jokes that if Rome sends one more army, they'll start charging admission. You laugh harder than you should. That's war humor. Grim, involuntary, and just a little too loud. As days pass, your army grows. Local Gauls begin joining you. They like Hannibal's confidence, and they really like how often he beats the Romans. They bring their own weapons, crude iron-studded clubs, long swords, even slings. They fight half-naked, painted, and loud. They're terrifying. You wonder whether Hannibal trusts them, but he never says. He just keeps moving south. Your gear is lighter now. You've learned to pack only what you need: a water skin, a dry cloak, a whetstone, and a lucky token. Maybe a coin, maybe a bone. Superstition runs deep out here. Every soldier has his ritual. Yours is whispering your mother's name before battle. You haven't spoken to her in years, but her name feels like armor. You hear whispers of panic in Rome. Senators arguing, temples filling with prayers. The people are afraid, and rightfully so. Hannibal is like a ghost story they can't wake from. Some call him a demon, others a genius. A few even say he's protected by the gods. You know better. He's just a man. But a man with a plan. The winter rains begin to fall as you trudge south with the army boots caked in thick Italian mud. The landscape changes: vineyards, olive groves, and stone farmhouses dot the land. But your focus stays locked on the horizon. You know Rome will come again harder this time. They have to. They can't ignore you after Trebia. And they won't rest until they either crush Hannibal or bleed trying. As always, Hannibal moves unpredictably. He avoids major cities, slips through valleys, and never lets the army sit still for long. You sleep in damp cloaks and wake to cold bread, but you're still alive. And so far, Hannibal's strange dance through Italy is working. Roman legions chase you, but they never quite catch you. He's always one step ahead. You hear rumors, news carried by traders, shepherds, and Gauls who've taken to your camp like moths to a fire. Rome has appointed new consuls. Gaius Flaminius is one of them, a bold, brash populist who sees glory in a frontal attack. You've seen his kind before speeches first, strategy later. You're told he's marching north with a fresh army straight toward your position near Lake Trasimene. Hannibal smiles again. That's always either comforting or terrifying depending on the context. You don't camp openly. You hide in the fog-covered hills near the lake, nestled in gullies and thick woods. You don't light fires. You speak in whispers. And then you wait. When dawn comes, the lake is shrouded in a thick mist. It's almost beautiful. Silent silver still. Almost. The Roman army marches along the lake's edge, tight between water and steep hills. They think they're heading to intercept you. They don't know you're already here surrounding them. Then Hannibal gives the signal. Your unit surges down the hillside screaming. The Gauls beside you howl. From all directions, left, right, and rear, your comrades descend. The Romans are caught flat-footed, their formations collapsing instantly. It's not a battle. It's a trap, sprung perfectly. You can barely see 5 feet ahead in the mist, but you hear everything. The clatter of armor, the screams of horses, the crash of shields. It lasts hours, though it feels like minutes. When the fog finally lifts, the Romans are gone. Or rather, they're still here, just not standing. Some 15,000 Roman soldiers lie dead. Their commander Flaminius is one of them, thrown from his horse and trampled. The rest routed, drowned, or taken prisoner. It's one of the worst ambushes in Roman history. You sit on a boulder afterward, your hands shaking from adrenaline. A fellow soldier offers you a crust of bread. You take it. Your fingers are stained with blood, not all of it yours. You chew slowly. The taste of victory is gritty and cold. You think maybe Rome will surrender now. They don't. Instead, they panic. Back in the capital, the Senate declares a state of emergency. They do something they haven't done in over a century. They appoint a dictator. His name is Quintus Fabius Maximus. And he has a plan. A very boring, very Roman plan. He doesn't want to fight you. He wants to starve you. Fabius follows you, yes, but from a distance. He shadows your movements like a cautious ghost. No ambushes, no attacks. Just constant surveillance and the occasional scorched earth tactic. Fields are burned. Food is hidden. Cities are warned to deny you shelter. It's infuriating. You march through central Italy for weeks, then months. You're hungry. The locals are no longer curious, they're hostile. You raid for supplies, sometimes clashing with small Roman patrols. The army is starting to grumble. Even the Gauls, who were initially wild with enthusiasm, now speak openly of leaving. Hannibal, as always, adjusts. At one point, cornered in a narrow pass by Fabius and his forces, he orders a night maneuver involving hundreds of oxen. Their horns are set ablaze, yes, actual fire, and the animals are driven up the hills to distract the Romans. In the chaos, your army slips away through a different pass entirely. You're tired, yes, but also laughing. Who lights cows on fire to win a war? Hannibal does. Fabius earns a new nickname from his cautious strategy, Cunctator the Delayer. Some Romans praise his patience. Others jeer him for cowardice. You don't care what they call him. He's clever, and he's making life harder. Yet still, no one truly defeats you. Months pass. Seasons change. You learn to recognize Italian birdsong. You can tell when a village is abandoned by the way smoke curls from the chimneys, thin and quick, meaning a hasty departure. You wear a Roman belt, now taken off a soldier you bested near Iridium. It's a small, cruel trophy. You march further south. The land grows warmer again. Hannibal sets his sights on Apulia, a broad region with fertile plains, and another opportunity, Cannae. You don't know it yet, but Cannae will change everything. For now, you camp under olive trees. You trade stories with soldiers from Spain and Carthage. One of them teaches you to dice with painted stones. Another gives you a nickname, Fog Walker, in honor of Trasimene. You laugh even though the nightmares still wake you some nights. Rome, for all its fear and desperation, has decided to try one more time. But this time, they go big. They raise the largest army in their history, some 80,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry. 2 consuls will lead them, Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro. One is cautious, one is bold. You hope the bold one is in charge when the battle comes. The Romans believe sheer numbers will win the day. Hannibal believes numbers mean nothing if you use them wrong. Cannae is coming, and you, for better or worse, will be in the middle of it. The sun rises harsh and golden over the wide flat fields near the town of Cannae. You squint into the distance as dust plumes signal the movement of Roman troops, thousands upon thousands of them. You've never seen an army this large. Honestly, no one has. It's like watching an entire city come to life and march toward you with one shared purpose to end your existence. Your heart pounds. You can't help it. Even after all the battles, the blood, the victories, this one feels different. Cannae is a wide open plain bordered by the winding Aufidus River. There are few places to hide, no thick forests or hills to use for surprise maneuvers. It's the kind of battlefield Rome loves. Formation-friendly advantage Roman. Or so they think. You help pitch camp to the north of the river. Hannibal, ever unconventional, sets up his position with the river at his back, a risky move most generals avoid. He knows what he's doing. You hope. There's tension in the air. Everyone feels it. The Carthaginian army isn't just made up of Carthaginians. There are Numidian horsemen, Gallic warriors, Spanish swordsmen, Libyan phalanxes, and you. A cobbled-together mosaic of cultures and fighting styles somehow welded into a weapon. It shouldn't work, but it does. You're told to rest. Tomorrow it begins. That night the camp is unusually quiet. No singing, no dice games, no arguments. Men sit in circles oiling weapons, sharing wine, sharpening blades that will dull by noon tomorrow. One of the Spanish fighters hums a lullaby. A Numidian whispers a prayer to an unfamiliar god. You try to sleep but end up staring at the stars, wondering if you'll ever see them again. Dawn breaks. The Romans, led today by the aggressive consul Vero, form up with confidence. They have deep, tight lines, layers upon layers of infantry, meant to push and crush anything in front of them. It's a brick wall of men. Your side lines up in a crescent. You stand near the center, flanked by Spanish and Gallic soldiers. The Libyans, veteran heavy infantry with long spears and disciplined ranks, are on the wings, hidden slightly behind. The cavalry takes position on the far edges, with Hannibal's brother Hasdrubal commanding one wing and the unpredictable Numidians on the other. You take your place. Heart-hammering hands, slick with sweat inside your gloves. The summer air is already stifling, thick with dust and tension. Then it begins. The Roman line surges forward, like a tidal wave of bronze and fury. Their goal is clear: smash through your center and break the army in two. You brace yourself, grit your teeth, and meet the charge. It's chaos. Swords clash shields, splintermen scream. You hold your ground step by painful step. The Roman pressure is immense, overwhelming. You're being pushed back intentionally. Hannibal's plan is in motion. The crescent center collapses, slowly absorbing the Roman momentum. It's terrifying. You take step after step backward, barely holding the line. You can see the worry on your comrades' faces, the blood on their tunics, the uncertainty rising. But then, the wings move. The Libyan infantry steps forward from their hidden positions on the flanks. Silent, deliberate, precise, like a trap snapping shut. They strike the Roman sides, cutting into their unprotected flanks with practiced ease. You don't cheer, there's no time, but your spine straightens. Hope flickers. Meanwhile, the cavalry battle rages on the flanks. Hasdrubal's forces manage to scatter the Roman horsemen on your left. On the right, the Numidians perform a chaotic dance of feints and retreats, keeping their enemies busy and confused. Then Hasdrubal's cavalry loops around. They ride behind the Roman lines and slam into the Roman rear. Suddenly, the invincible wall becomes a box with no way out. You're in the center of a storm now. Romans push forward, but they're surrounded. They can't retreat. They can't maneuver. They can barely breathe. Panic sets in. You see it in their eyes, men who believed in their numbers now trapped by them. You fight like an animal, every move fueled by fear and fire. You stab, block, swing, duck. Time stretches, bends, twists. The air reeks of blood, sweat, and something else: defeat. It's a slaughter. Some Romans surrender. Others try to run. Most die where they stand. The dust turns red beneath your feet. By late afternoon, the field is silent. You stagger away from the carnage, past bodies stacked like broken furniture. You drop your shield. Your arms ache, your legs tremble, your ears ring with phantom screams. You collapse near a wounded Libyan soldier, both of you too exhausted to speak. Around you, the survivors tend to the wounded, gather weapons, and search for water. It's over. Cannae is done. It will go down as one of the most complete tactical victories in military history. Around 50,000 to 70,000 Roman soldiers are dead, more than half of the entire army. It's the kind of defeat that breaks nations. Hannibal ever composed rides through the battlefield like a general inspecting a training exercise. No gloating, no celebration, just a quiet nod. He has done what no one thought possible. He's beaten Rome so badly they can barely comprehend it. But oddly, no one feels triumphant. Not really. Too many friends lie dead. Too much blood soaks the ground. You sleep that night under a makeshift canopy, using a Roman cloak as a blanket. You try not to dream. Back in Rome, the city spirals into mourning and shock. There are no consuls left, no clear plan, just dread. Historians still argue whether Hannibal should have marched straight to Rome after Cannae. Some say he could have ended the war. Others believe the city would have held out no matter what. But Hannibal doesn't move on the capital. He has his reasons. And you'll be marching again soon. The morning after Cannae is still. There's no trumpet call, no barked orders, just the quiet shuffle of exhausted men and the low moans of the wounded. You wake with a start, unsure for a moment where you are. The Roman cloak that covered you is damp with dew and darker stains you try not to identify. Cannae is behind you physically, emotionally, spiritually. But its weight doesn't lift. Not yet. Probably not ever. You move stiffly through the field. The sun climbs higher, and the air fills with the iron tang of blood. Scavengers, both human and animal, pick through the bodies. Buzzards circle overhead. A dog, probably once part of a Roman supply train, gnaws on something better left undescribed. You help with cleanup. You don't have a choice. The wounded are sorted into those who can be saved and those who, well, can't. You carry water, help bind wounds, hold down a soldier as a broken arm is reset with a sickening pop. One of your comrades from Iberia mutters a prayer as he buries a friend with his bare hands. You're not just fighting a war anymore. You're living inside it. News of the battle spreads like wildfire. Messengers gallop across Italy, their horses frothing their eyes wide with disbelief. Rome has suffered a blow so colossal, it almost defies understanding. 2 consuls dead, 8 legions wiped out, the cream of Roman society shattered. Some say the Romans try to hide the scale of the defeat. Others say they double down, training new recruits even faster. And then there's the moment, darkly iconic, when Rome orders all citizens into mourning. Shops close. Public officials wear black. The air inside the city itself feels like it has stopped moving. And yet, Rome doesn't fall. Back in camp, Hannibal gathers his commanders. You sit at the edge of the group, close enough to hear, too low-ranked to speak. His voice is calm, measured. He outlines supply needs, political moves, reinforcements. He mentions a new alliance with Capua, a rich southern city that's finally decided to back Carthage now that Rome looks mortal. You wonder if we've already won this decisively. What's left? But Hannibal knows. The war isn't over just because you humiliated the greatest army on earth. He turns to a map of Italy spread across a wooden table, stones at the corners to hold it down. His fingers trace the roads leading to Rome, but they stop short. He speaks of siege logistics, supply lines, political implications. You feel the tension in the room. Some of your comrades clearly expect a march on the capital, a thunderclap ending, a final blow. But Hannibal, this master of shock and strategy, chooses patience. Historians still argue whether it was his greatest misstep or his most strategic move. You return to your tent unsure what to believe. That night there's talk of celebration, muted, but real. A few soldiers sneak wine. Someone finds a flute. Someone else offers a grim joke. If we win any more battles like that, there'll be no one left to fight. It's funny. In a broken end-of-the-world sort of way, you're posted to a new unit the next day. Replacements, reinforcements, and a few captured Roman weapons are distributed. You trade your cracked shield for one with a lion painted on it. Faded, but still fierce. It makes you feel almost mythic. But every time you lift it, you remember the man who dropped it. Capua opens its gates to you weeks later. You've never seen such luxury. Marble columns, olive groves, shimmering pools. Capua is the kind of city where people wear perfume and sip wine in the middle of the day. It feels like the war doesn't exist here. For a moment, you almost believe it. The locals greet you with cautious smiles. They admire the discipline of Hannibal's army. They flatter the Numidians, fawn over the Spanish cavalry, and invite Carthaginian officers to feasts. You're offered fig dates, even a silk sash, which you politely refuse because, well, battlefield glam isn't exactly your thing. And yet not everyone welcomes you. You overhear whispers, accusations of opportunism, fears of Roman revenge. Some Capuans are already regretting their alliance. You wonder how long their loyalty will last. Back in Rome, the Senate decides to go full Rome mode. They refuse all peace negotiations. They pass laws against surrender. Even young boys are put into military training. It's a tantrum and a rallying cry all at once. Fabius Maximus, the famously cautious general who previously avoided direct battles with Hannibal, regains influence. He's nicknamed Cunctator, the Delayer. It's meant as an insult, but honestly, it's kinda brilliant. Fabius's strategy: wear Hannibal down, deny him direct combat, starve his supplies, let the weight of Italy's geography and time do what no Roman sword could, and it starts to work. Your unit is sent deeper into southern Italy. No major battles, just town after town, road after road, trying to coax more cities into siding with you. Some do, some don't. Some pretend to and then poison your water supply. It's exhausting. You begin to notice that the victories feel smaller. The cheers are quieter. The food, worse. Capua's promise of support turns lukewarm. Supplies trickle in instead of flowing. Troops get antsy, morale wavers. And Hannibal still calm? Still planning. Still deadly. But the gleam of Cannae is fading. One evening by a dying campfire, you overhear a Numidian scout say, "Maybe we did too well." You think about that. Is it possible to win too completely? To frighten your enemy into becoming the version of themselves they never knew they could be. Rome isn't collapsing, it's evolving, and you can feel the wind shifting. You wake to the sound of your own stomach growling. Breakfast is the same as yesterday, stale bread, olives if you're lucky, and lukewarm water that tastes like a wooden cup. Gone are the spoils of Capua. The luxury cities grow distant in your memory like dreams of a life you never really lived. Now you're marching again. Not toward glory this time, but toward survival. The Roman response to Cannae is no longer just fear, it's fury. They're rebuilding with a vengeance, and it shows in the frequency of skirmishes. These aren't grand set-piece battles anymore. These are ambushes in olive groves, street fights in mountain villages, endless patrols through winding paths where anything could be lurking around the bend. And Rome? Well, Rome adapts. They raise 2 new consular armies. They skip the older traditions, waive property requirements for new recruits, and crank the war machine into high gear. One historian called it the moment Rome grew teeth beneath the bruises. Poetic, sure, but also true. You see it firsthand when you clash with a Roman patrol near Beneventum. They fight like they've been personally insulted by the concept of Carthage. Their formation isn't elegant, but it's relentless. You kill a young Roman barely old enough to shave, and the look on his face isn't fear, it's resolve. You carry that expression with you for days. Meanwhile, Hannibal continues to maneuver. He avoids direct confrontation with the resurgent Roman legions, instead striking supply depots, courting allies, and holding terrain that still favors Carthage. But the cracks are starting to show. Some of your fellow soldiers whisper about food shortages. Others worry about Spain, where Roman forces have started to turn the tide. You overhear someone mutter, "If we lose Iberia, we lose everything." And then there's the matter of reinforcements, or the lack thereof. Hannibal's brother Hasdrubal is still up north battling to bring his own army into Italy. Messages are exchanged, coded desperate. Hannibal sends riders over the mountains, hoping his brother will break through. You begin to feel like a pawn caught between 2 enormous beasts gnashing at each other. Then something strange happens. You're ordered to rest. Not march, not raid, not patrol, but rest. Your camp near the Vulturnus River becomes a temporary haven. There are even rumors of wine coming from a nearby town, though it turns out to be mostly vinegar with ambition. Still, the change of pace is almost jarring. You try to remember the last time you heard birds instead of battle cries. During the lull, you're assigned to escort a group of Numidian cavalry who've been scouting in unfamiliar terrain. You ride with them through chest-high grass, past ancient Etruscan ruins and abandoned villas. They joke in a dialect you don't understand, but the tone is warm. At one point, one of them hands you a dried fig and says, "Better than Roman iron." You nod, chew slowly, and pretend you don't miss Capua's pastry carts. You come upon a burned-out village, charred beams, cracked amphorae, a child's sandal left in the dust. Whether Rome did it, or Hannibal's own foragers, no one knows. Either way, it's a ghost town now. The Numidians say a prayer in their own tongue and move on. That night, your dreams are restless. You see Cannae again, only this time it's reversed. You're the one being encircled, the one clawing for sunlight through walls of spears. When you wake, it's with a gasp. You're not alone. Across the camp, others stir in the dark. Nightmares are contagious out here. One of the Iberians murmurs, "We won the wrong war." No one disagrees. As spring turns to summer, Rome tightens the noose. They retake cities that once pledged loyalty to Carthage. They cut off your supply lines. Hannibal sends envoys in all directions, but many return empty-handed or not at all. And then the worst news yet. Hasdrubal's army, the one coming to reinforce you, has been intercepted. At the Battle of the Metaurus, Roman forces crush Hasdrubal's army. The Carthaginian dead are piled high, and Hasdrubal himself, brilliant, brave, and now very headless, is reduced to a warning. Rome sends his severed head to Hannibal. Literally. You're there when it arrives. It's in a sack. No fanfare. Just a quiet, awful weight placed before the general. Hannibal opens it in silence. No screams, no curses. Just a long pause. Then he closes the sack and walks away. You've never seen him look so tired. The army changes after that? Not immediately, not all at once, but the energy shifts. Some soldiers begin carving tokens for their gods. Others desert. A few just stop talking. It's like Cannae was a fire, and now you're watching the embers cool. Still orders keep coming. There's always something to march towards, some position to secure, some rumor of food or allies that needs verifying. But even the tide has turned. Hannibal no longer tries to conquer. He tries to endure. Rome's tactics, attrition, division, patience start to pay off. Cities that once cheered you now glare as you pass. Supply wagons vanish mysteriously. Roman propaganda spreads like smoke, telling tales of Hannibal as a monster, a baby eater, a foreign devil. You overhear a Roman prisoner once say he doesn't need horns. You gave him all the fire he needs. Carthage sends a few reinforcements, but it's a trickle. Hannibal writes letters, sends pleas, argues strategy. But the homeland has its own problems. Political infighting, naval skirmishes, economic strain. Historians still argue whether Carthage's hesitation doomed its greatest general. You just know it feels like the world is growing colder. Even the land turns against you. Rains wash out your paths. Snow arrives early. Disease creeps through the camp like a whisper. Soldiers drop without wounds. Even your own boots fall apart. But somehow, Hannibal endures. He studies maps by torchlight. He adjusts troop movements, revises ration strategies, negotiates with foreign envoys who still visit now and then, hoping to align themselves with legend. Because that's what he's become, not just a general, a legend walking upright, wounded, surrounded, yet still moving forward. And you keep following him. Because what else is there? You don't remember when it stopped being a campaign and started feeling like a curse. The army isn't an army anymore. It's a drifting band of survivors with rusty weapons and too many stories. You march through the Apennines like ghosts, no longer certain of what city lies ahead, or if it'll welcome you or hurl javelins. The only certainty is Hannibal. He still rides at the front, wrapped in a dark indigo cloak, hair streaked with more gray now, eyes as sharp as ever. He no longer promises victory just the next day. And somehow that's enough. Rome, meanwhile, has gone full Hydra. Every time you think you've dealt with one legion, two more appear. They're cutting off your breath, your food, your hope. But they don't engage you in open battle anymore. They've learned that lesson. Instead, they contain you. They let the elements, starvation and exhaustion, do their dirty work. You learn to eat things you never thought edible. Acorn mash, roasted grasshoppers, even horsehide boiled to jelly. And still you march. You pass ruined temples, sunken farmhouses, villages that echo with your own footsteps. Sometimes a child peeks from a window, then vanishes. You don't blame them. One day you stumble into a grove of old cypress trees, and someone starts laughing, hysterical, bitter, hollow. We're walking in circles, they say, and they might be right. But you keep walking, because Hannibal does. During this time, a rumor begins to spread. Scipio is returning. Not just any Scipio. Publius Cornelius Scipio, son of the man Hannibal once wounded at Ticinus. The young general who survived Cannae, who fought in Spain, who now burns with the desire to end what Hannibal started. And he's not in Italy. He's going to Africa. That's when everything changes. The Carthaginian Senate, finally feeling the heat, sends urgent word to Hannibal return home. Historians still argue whether this was a strategic retreat or political betrayal. All you know is that the order comes, and for the first time in over a decade, you're heading south. It's a strange feeling, like the end of a fever dream. As you descend through southern Italy, you pass towns you once liberated, now boarded up and silent. Farmers turn their backs. Shepherds spit at your shadow. The legend of Hannibal has curdled into something sour, but at the coast ships await. Crewed by grumbling Phoenician sailors and painted in faded purple, they feel like time machines. The voyage back to Africa is rough. You watch familiar mountains shrink behind you, unsure whether you'll ever see them again. Probably not. The sea is choppy. Storms lash the sails. You tie yourself to a barrel to keep from slipping overboard. Someone jokes, if Neptune wants Hannibal, even Poseidon might flinch. Landfall comes like a dream. Africa, home soil for some. The sun here is different, less forgiving. The earth smells of dry clay and hot wind. You step onto the sand with legs that barely remember flat ground. Carthage looms in the distance, tall, proud, and suddenly very nervous. Scipio is already in the field, making alliances, raising troops, winning over local kings, with honeyed words and Roman gold. He's not just a warrior, he's a chess master. Hannibal wastes no time. He begins recruiting. Veterans from old campaigns. Elephants bred for intimidation. New recruits from Numidian tribes, though not all of them are reliable. Some fight for gold, others for revenge. A few just like chaos. You drill again. Shields are refitted. Rust scraped from swords. The old war songs come back, though more like whispers than anthems. This is no longer about glory. This is survival against a new kind of genius. When the battle finally comes, you feel it in your bones. Zama, flat plains under a pale sky, vultures already circling. You stand in formation with soldiers who fought beside you for years, and others you just met yesterday. No one speaks. Everyone knows. This is the final round. Scipio's army approaches with terrifying discipline. Roman legions, Numidian cavalry under the now defected Massinissa, and war horns that seem to mock your heartbeat. Hannibal rides down the line. He speaks not of gods or empires, but of memory. You have marched with me from the Alps to the sea, he says. You have stood in the snows and in the furnace. If this is the end, let it be an end worth remembering. Then with a nod, he signals the charge. You hear the elephants first, your own thundering forward. You can feel the tremble in your feet. But Scipio anticipated this. His men step aside like water around a stone, letting the beasts crash uselessly into the void. Then the infantry slams into place, shield on shield, sword against spear. You are pressed into a wall of sweat metal and screaming. You stab without seeing parry, without aiming. It's chaos with a rhythm. The sky vanishes in dust. Somewhere you hear a trumpet signal, Scipio's cavalry circling back. You know what that means. They're behind you. Déjà vu. It's Cannae again, but reversed. You fight on, because Hannibal still stands. You see him at the center sword, flashing cloak, torn shouting orders like a man possessed. Even Scipio years later will say, I faced not a man, but history itself. But history bleeds, and eventually, even it must fall. The Carthaginian lines buckle, the Numidians rout. You're cut off, there's no escape. You drop your shield and raise your hands, but no one's looking. The Romans are already moving past, chasing greater victories. You sit on the ground surrounded by the dead and dying, and you wait. Eventually the sun sets. The war is over, but the memory, that'll linger for centuries. You wake the next morning with dust in your mouth and the weight of history on your chest. Zama is quiet now, eerily so. The battlefield lies in still disarray, a tapestry of broken spears, curled fingers, and discarded helmets, half buried in dry earth. The wind stirs, only the banners limp and forgotten. You sit up slowly, joints cracking, ribs sore from the press of battle. Around you, other survivors begin to rise, not many. There's no trumpet for you, no cheers, no lines of triumph. Just the low murmur of Roman medics moving among their own, and a few scavengers already eyeing what's left of your comrades. Somewhere to the north, Hannibal is alive, but he's not coming for you. He withdrew in good order, they say. Left the field once the lines collapsed. Some claim he vanished entirely, riding off under the cover of smoke. Others whisper that he walked calmly into the Roman lines and nodded at Scipio before disappearing forever. Historians still argue whether Hannibal's retreat was a strategic decision or an act of personal despair. You just know you never saw him again. The next weeks are slow and bitter. Carthage, once proud and defiant, is no longer a city of brass lions and harbor chants. It becomes a waiting room. The Senate negotiates surrender while pretending it still has power. Roman envoys stroll through the markets like new landlords, all smug smiles and sharp eyes. Scipio, now hailed Africanus, doesn't burn the city. Not yet. He's a man who plays the long game. You're not executed, surprisingly. Instead, you're allowed to return to civilian life, whatever that means now. You sell your sword, buy a basket of dates, sit on a beach where boys skip stones and pretend they never heard of Zama. Sometimes you pass fellow veterans on the street. You lock eyes, nod slightly, and keep walking. There's nothing left to say. One day, a boy no more than 12 asks you what Hannibal was like. You hesitate. Do you tell him about the freezing nights in the Alps, the elephants slipping from cliffs, the endless marches through hostile lands? Do you share the laughter over stolen figs, the terror of Roman cavalry, the eerie calm before a phalanx collided with flesh? Or do you say nothing? In the end, you offer the truth that feels least heavy. He never forgot your name, you say, even though you don't remember the boys. Meanwhile, Carthage keeps living. Sort of. It trades under Roman oversight, pays massive reparations, and slowly forgets what it once was. Statues crumble, libraries rot, temples echo with emptier prayers. But Rome, oh Rome, glows. Victory at Zama cements Scipio's legacy. He's celebrated with parades minted on coins and given near divine status. Roman mothers name their sons after him. Poets pen verses about his gaze, his strategy, his perfect Roman nose. And Hannibal, he wanders, first Tyre, then Ephesus. Sometimes a royal court in the east, sometimes hiding under a false name near the Black Sea. Always pursued, always restless. He sends letters, advises, kings whispers war into ears, eager for revenge. He never stops scheming. You hear that he designs warships in Syria, teaches children mathematics in Crete, drinks bitter wine in Bithynia, and dreams of elephants on snowy peaks. They say he once carved a message into a temple wall. I showed them what one man could do. Eventually, even that echo fades. Rome demands his surrender one final time. Cornered in exile, Hannibal opens a small vial of poison tucked in his ring for years and drains it quietly. It doesn't make a sound. Years later, you walk to the market and see something curious. A puppet show. Two wooden figures clash before a cheering crowd. One wears a Roman helmet. The other, a crooked nose and cape stitched from old linen. You recognize them instantly. Even now, children reenact Cannae. Carved swords clash. Tiny limbs flail. The Roman wins every time. But the crowd still roars when the other puppet, your puppet, stands up again and again. See, the puppeteer says. He never quits. You smile. Because you remember. You remember the thunder of hooves over cold stones. The sun rising on shields held high. The laughter and firelight. The moment you first realized you were part of something that would outlive your name. You might not have statues, but your shadow still stretches across the Mediterranean. Time goes on. Carthage rises a little, then falls again. Rome marches on into new wars, new legends, new excesses. But the ghost of Hannibal never quite leaves their halls. Even their generals quote him. Even their enemies study him. His tactics are copied. His letters preserved, his warnings ignored. Historians still argue whether Zama truly broke Carthage or simply delayed the inevitable. But you know that while Rome won the war, Hannibal won something else. He won the story, and you were there for it. One day, as you sit watching gulls squabble over fish guts, a Roman traveler joins you. He's young, loud, and armed with questions. "Were you at Cannae?" he asks eagerly, like a boy asking if you saw dragons. You nod slowly. He asks about the numbers, the tactics, the deaths. You answer some, dodge others. Finally he asks, "Was Hannibal really that good?" You chuckle. "He was better." The traveler scribbles in a notebook, already forgetting your face. But you don't mind. You've become a vessel, and vessels carry echoes. So you rise, stretch aching knees, and walk home, letting the past trail behind you like a cloak frayed by wind. You're older now. The battles feel further away, not because they've lost meaning, but because your back creaks more than your sword arm ever did. You still remember everything, though. Every horn blast, every drop of blood soaked into your sandals. And yes, even every grain of sand lodged between your teeth as you cheered for a victory you didn't believe in. The world has shifted, Carthage beaten, but breathing continues under Roman oversight. It's not the Carthage you knew, the defiant, gold-trimmed queen of the Mediterranean. It's quieter, politer. The ships in the harbor now pay Roman tax. The coin has changed faces, and the market stalls hum in Latin more often than Phoenician. But you still visit the docks every morning, not because you have business there, your merchant days are done, but because there's comfort in watching ships drift toward the horizon. You wonder if Hannibal ever stared at the same line, wondering if his war would end or begin anew. Historians still argue whether he truly intended to sack Rome or simply force a treaty. You chuckle to yourself. You fought for him, and you're still not sure. Some days, a few young Carthaginian boys sit with you. One has bright eyes and endless questions. He's obsessed with heroes Achilles, Hercules, Scipio, Africanus. You don't correct him. But then he asks about Hannibal. "Did he have magic?" the boy says, wide-eyed. "No," you reply, adjusting the linen wrap on your shoulder. "Just ideas sharper than swords." They blink at you. That answer doesn't sparkle enough for their imaginations. So you let your voice drop lower. "But they say his elephants breathed fire," you add with a wink, and the boys gasp in delight. You lie a little, because you know the truth is sometimes too heavy for young minds. And besides, the myth is growing now bigger than facts. More powerful. You remember the whispers across the Roman frontier. Even in their victory, they feared Hannibal. For years after Zama, Roman mothers still muttered warnings to their children. "Sleep now, or Hannibal will come." He became more than a man. He became a bedtime monster. That's when you know the war isn't over. Not truly. The Romans might have taken Carthage's pride, but they accidentally polished its greatest weapon, Hannibal's legend. You hear that in far-off libraries, scrolls of his battles are copied, studied, feared. The Alps crossing still considered impossible. The encirclement at Cannae repeated by generals who never understood how it worked. They parrot tactics without knowing the mind that made them. There's a scholar visiting from Alexandria. He's pale squints too much and carries a bag of ink-stained scrolls. He finds you on the third day of his visit. "I was told you fought under Hannibal," he says, holding a quill like it might stab truth from your chest. You nod, slowly. He sits beside you, asks question after question. "Did you see the poisoned javelins? The feigned retreats? Did Hannibal really cry when his brother died?" You answer most. Some you let drift in the wind. But when he asks, "Did he ever speak of fear?" You pause. "He never feared men," you say. "Only time." The scholar scribbles, frowns, scribbles again. Later you overhear him reciting a poem about Hannibal's dreams. It's mostly wrong. But the crowd listens, mouths open, leaning in. Truth fades. Story remains. Sometimes you visit the old training fields. Grass now creeps through the cracks. Children race sticks against imaginary legions. One girl, maybe 10, holds a basket on her head and pretends it's a helmet. She shouts orders in 3 languages. Her friends follow. You nod at her when she passes. She nods back, unaware she's marching across centuries. One day, a Roman dignitary visits the city. He stands on a platform and announces new taxes, new roads, new statues of Scipio. People applaud politely. You don't. You remember standing in the same square when Hannibal returned from Spain, scars still fresh. He didn't need a platform or a fanfare, just his eyes. The Roman continues to speak, gesturing dramatically. But behind him, a little boy sneaks onto the stage, raises a wooden elephant on a stick, and marches it across the floor with an exaggerated trumpet sound. The crowd laughs. Even the dignitary smirks. Because the Romans own the city, yes, but not its imagination. Not yet. And sometimes you dream, not about battles, not anymore. You dream of the march across rivers, mountains, frozen paths under silver stars. You dream of oil fires on your hands, the smell of citrus groves, the moment when your heart beats so loudly you thought the enemy might hear it. In your dreams, Hannibal doesn't age. He's always in motion, riding ahead, his cloak whipping behind him, eyes scanning the distance. He never looks back, never needs to. You're always behind him. And even now, in sleep you follow. You wake sometimes with tears on your cheeks, not from sorrow, but from the sheer privilege of having lived it. Historians still argue whether Carthage could have truly won, but they never argue whether Hannibal mattered. And you were there when history caught fire. The stars that guided you then still burn above, steady and uncaring. You wonder if someday far in the future, someone will look up and think of elephants crossing impossible places. Maybe they'll speak your name too, but probably not. And that's okay, because you know you mattered. And Hannibal, he made the world bigger. You shuffle along the edge of the market square, old knees, aching the sun, catching on worn cobblestones as life continues, loud, messy, indifferent to memory. This is Carthage in its Roman twilight. Traders bark in Latin and Greek with a smattering of dusty Punic. Baskets brim with olives, wine amphorae glint in the midday sun, and kids chase each other with sticks, pretending they're cavalry. You pause at a fig stall. The vendor is new young with a scar down one cheek, probably earned from some barroom brawl, not a battlefield. He doesn't recognize you. Few do anymore. That suits you fine. Your fingertips graze a piece of parchment tucked in your tunic, a letter half read and twice folded, sent by a scholar in Utica. He's been compiling tales of Hannibal, trying to stitch together truth from 100 fraying threads. One passage sticks with you. His war became a mirror, not for Rome, but for us. You mouth the words as you walk their rhythm, steady as a drumbeat. A familiar voice cuts the air. Heard the Romans want to name a new province after Scipio. It's old Menath, a fellow veteran, leaning on a twisted staff beneath the olive tree near the forum steps. You grin. He's still sharp as a spear's edge. Only if it comes with a statue that sweats olive oil, you joke. He cackles the sound a crow's rasp. We should build our own statue. Hannibal riding an elephant crushing tax collectors. You laugh together, heads thrown back, uncaring who hears. But beneath it, there's something else. A truth. Hannibal left no tomb, no temple, no mountain carved with his face. The Romans made sure of that. Erased what they could, melted his coins, rewrote his victories in prose that praised Scipio instead. In Rome's version, Carthage was arrogant, foolish, barbaric. They turned him into a villain, not a visionary. And yet, here you are decades later, telling his story over figs and firelight. Historians still argue whether that erasure was strategic or just spiteful. But it doesn't matter, because his memory is smuggled in stories now quiet as a whisper, persistent as wind. Later that evening, you sit with Menath by the seawall. It's cooler now, waves licking stone with the patience of time. You share bread, a skin of old wine, and your silence. And then he asks the question you've both avoided for years. Did we lose? Not did Carthage lose, that answer's too easy. But we, the men, the marchers, the dreamers who followed Hannibal over mountains. You stare at the horizon before answering. We changed the way wars are fought. He nods. But not how they end. Another silence. This one, longer, softer. We weren't meant to win, you say at last. Just to prove it could be done. The sky darkens. Stars blink into view like old friends returned from absence. Somewhere behind you, the city sings flutes and feet tapping in taverns, the clink of amphorae lovers bickering over whose turn it is to fetch water. You could fade into that, but not yet. There's still one more place to go. You walk alone the next morning, wrapped in a saffron-dyed cloak that's frayed but familiar. Through alleyways, past weavers humming at their looms, and into the north quarter where the ground rises slightly. This is where the Roman general Paulus built his villa, they say. Now it's empty, abandoned, after the governor's wife claimed it was unlucky. You smirk. Maybe she heard hoofbeats in her sleep. You reach a modest stone platform surrounded by weathered columns. Someone's carved crude letters at the base. To the man who saw Rome tremble. No name, just the echo. A boy sits nearby, sketching the column's tongue, poking from his lip in concentration. He notices you, eyes darting between your face and the etching. Who's that about, he asks. You point toward the sea. A man who climbed the impossible and made gods nervous. The boy frowns. My tutor says Carthage deserved to fall. Then your tutor has read too many Roman scrolls, you say gently. He nods slowly, returns to his sketch lines, becoming bolder. You leave him with a quiet hope that not every memory will vanish under marble dust. Later at the city bathhouse, someone recognizes you not by face, but by the old battle scar along your ribs. A former soldier. Roman, no less. He lowers his voice in the steam. You were at Cannae, weren't you? You raise an eyebrow. He looks over his shoulder. I heard it in Capua. A tale of the man who saw the entire Roman army trapped like chickens in a basket. Must have been someone else, you lie. But he smiles. We study him now, you know. Hannibal. At the academy. You don't reply. Because what could you say? That the man Rome feared most is now required reading. That victory isn't always the last word. You step out of the baths and feel the sunlight on your shoulders. It's late now. You walk the long way home, past merchants lighting lanterns, cats stretching along rooftops, and lovers whispering under archways. And as you reach your doorstep, you glance back. A breeze picks up carrying salt and memory. You smile, because maybe stories don't die. They just wait for the right ears. Your sleep is light that night. Too much wine, perhaps, or maybe just the weight of too many remembered names. Still you rise with the dawn. The seagulls squawk like impatient senators, and the air smells of wet stone and cumin. You're heading somewhere sacred, not with incense and idols, but with maps, ink, and the scars of collective memory. The scholar from Utica invited you weeks ago, and now you finally accept. The place, a library. Not grand, not Roman. Just a tall room in an old house with scrolls stacked like firewood and a skylight that leaks when it rains. The scholar Kimon meets you at the gate. He's young. Too young to understand war, but old enough to chase its ghosts. His fingers are stained with ink, his robe a modest russet. He bows his head in quiet respect, as if you're the high priest of some forgotten faith. Inside the walls are covered in maps, some drawn recently, others flaking at the edges. They trace Hannibal's route from Cartagena to the Alps, from the Rhone crossing to Trasimene, from the slaughter at Cannae to the empty promises of Capua. You pause in front of one sketch in particular. It shows the Italian boot in a strange perspective bird's eye, with Hannibal's elephants marching up the spine like vertebrae. The Alps look less like mountains and more like teeth. Drawn from memory, you ask? Kimon nods. One of your generation, perhaps. We think the ink was mixed with ash. You chuckle. Of course it was. There's a reverence in the room. Not for war, but for meaning. For understanding the cost of boldness, the price of daring too much, and winning too early. Kimon leads you to a low table with 3 scrolls laid open. One is Greek, the other Punic, and the last, a rare prize, is in Latin attributed to an officer who supposedly survived Cannae by playing dead under a corpse for 2 days. Rome calls it a tragedy, Kimon says. But I think it's a warning. You pick up the Latin scroll and scan the familiar phrases. Encirclement, terror, collapse, dust so thick no gods could see through it. You clear your throat. Historians still argue whether Hannibal meant to encircle from the start. Do you think he didn't, Kimon presses? I think he didn't have to, you say. The Romans walked into it themselves. He doesn't write that down, just absorbs it, files it away. You admire that. Later, as sun shafts slice through the broken skylight, Kimon asks the question you knew would come. Why didn't he march on Rome? You've asked yourself that too many times. It echoes in veterans' taverns and dusty scrolls. It haunts strategy halls from Alexandria to Carthago Nova. And truthfully, there's no answer that satisfies. Some say he lacked siege equipment. Others that his army was exhausted. Some whisper that he wanted Rome to surrender out of fear, not fire. And then there's the cynical theory he liked being the underdog. You give Kimon your favorite version because he wasn't fighting a city. He was fighting an idea. He doesn't blink. Then what was Carthage, he asks. You smile slow and tired. A warning the world didn't hear in time. You leave the scrolls and step into the courtyard. The fig tree is dropping early fruit and bees hum lazily in the shade. You rest on a bench, the old kind with marble legs and wood that smells faintly of cedar oil. The city outside continues its rhythm traders, bartering sandals, slapping on sun-baked stone, and somewhere a flute playing a Carthaginian tune no Roman would recognize. That tune, though, it stays with you. Because you heard it once, long ago after the Battle of Cannae, when your commander tried to raise morale with music and wine. Play like Carthage hasn't lost, he said. You did. For one night the camp danced like victors. The next morning orders came to march again, and the music died. Now as you listen, the thought returns. Maybe stories outlast their endings. The city of Carthage crushed beneath Roman boots, sacked, salted, and turned into farmland. Yes, but the idea, the one Hannibal believed in, that will and wit could topple even the largest empire, that idea slipped the noose. It made it to books, to bard songs, to your memories tucked behind your ribs, like a knife you no longer draw. You hear footsteps behind you. Kimon again. I have something else, he says. From beneath his robe, he produces a tiny carved token, an elephant barely the size of your thumb. It's made of bone, or perhaps ivory long darkened with age. Its trunk is raised eyes carved as 2 sharp dots, found near the trebia, he says. Just lying there. You take it gently. It was his symbol, you murmur. Kimon nods. Some say soldiers carried them for luck. You don't mention that you had one too. Lost it in the mud at Trasimene. Cursed it at the time. Now you just nod. Later, as you walk home, you keep the elephant in your palm. The weight is nothing but the feeling. That's another story. You pass people who don't know your name but smile anyway. Children dodge your steps, shouting Roman rhymes that would have gotten them cuffed in your youth. And for the first time in years, you feel something loosen in your chest. Not relief, not closure, just breath. You survived Cannae, and Capua, and betrayal, and boredom. And now you survived the forgetting. the slow fade of names and motives. But not yet. Not tonight. There's still more to remember, still more to tell, still more to pass on, even if it's just one carved elephant at a time. Evening in the city rolls in on quiet wheels. The sun slips behind the hills like a thief leaving the sky streaked in purple and brass. Lamps are being lit, small oil flames flickering in alcoves, casting halos on worn plaster walls. You sit outside your modest quarters, sipping watered wine, watching a gecko stalk an unlucky moth along the stones. And just as your mind begins to drift, someone approaches. It's Gaius, an old companion. You recognize him by his gait before his face, the way his left knee drags slightly from a wound you remember far too well. He carries no scrolls, no gifts, no wine, just memory walking on two legs. He greets you with a nod. No embrace. You were never that kind of soldier. Thought I'd find you here, he says. I passed by the baths, but the steam smelled wrong. You gesture to the empty stool. He takes it like it was always waiting for him. For a while you sit in silence. Not awkward, just old. Like two worn shields leaning against each other. Then he speaks. Do you remember the centurion who tried to swim across the Ophitis during the retreat? You laugh. Tried is generous. Right, Gaius grins. Took off everything but his sandals. Said the gods wouldn't drown a man wearing Roman leather. Did the gods agree? No, Gaius says, still smiling. But we all cheered like they did. And that's the thing, isn't it? So much of survival, of war, of life afterward, is just clinging to the moments that didn't break you. The absurd, the brave, the tragicomic. The bits that historians rarely write about because they're too human to fit in marble. You pour him a cup. To sandals you toast. To foolish sandals, he replies. The conversation wanders the way memories do. You speak of mess halls, of the smell of lentils, and burning olive oil of the superstitious archer who wouldn't shoot until he whispered to his quiver. Gaius recalls how the horses hated crossing the Trasimene fog, and how one officer swore he saw ghosts in the reeds. Historians still argue. Gaius says, swirling his wine, whether Hannibal used psychological tricks, or if it was just bad luck we called genius. Probably both, you answer. But I'd rather face genius than bad luck. He raises a brow. Why? You can plan for genius. It's that line that quiets you both. Because now the conversation edges toward the place you both came to avoid. Cannae. Always it returns to that dry field, to that ring of death, to the day the Roman heart nearly stopped beating. I don't dream about the battle anymore, Gaius says, voice low. I dream about the quiet after, the crows, the dust in my mouth, the waiting. You nod. The sky felt too big that day. He looks at you. Do you think we mattered? There's no sarcasm in his tone, no bitterness. Just the question that sits at the root of every survivor's soul. Did we matter? You sip your wine and let the question settle. Because the truth is, the world moved on. Rome didn't fall that day. It roared back with a vengeance. Hannibal eventually limped home a legend too heavy to carry. Carthage salted, flattened, forgotten by many. And the men who stood in the shield walls of Cannae, mostly names on grave tablets, if even that. But history is strange. It loops back in curious ways. Like this two old friends reliving a battle over warm wine and cooler air, their words drifting toward the moon. Maybe we didn't matter, you finally say to emperors or maps, but someone had to hold the line long enough for the story to survive. Gaius taps his cup against yours. Then here's to being the prologue. Later he leaves, and you watch his form disappear into the lamplight. The gecko's gone, the moth victorious for one more night. You rise and stretch, bones cracking in quiet protest. Inside, the room welcomes you with shadows and the smell of dust and lemon oil. You pause before blowing out the flame. Your eyes land on the small carved elephant still resting on the table. You pick it up, weighing it in your palm again. Suddenly a memory returns. Not a grand one, a small buried one. A boy on the road to Cannae, maybe 12 years old, clutching his father's hand, watching soldiers pass, eyes wide with awe. That boy had shouted, "Will they win, Papa?" The man had replied, "They are Romans, my son. They are Rome." You wonder if that boy grew up, if he survived the years that followed, if he remembered that answer the same way you now remember it. Because in a way, the boy was right, and the father too. The men of Cannae didn't just bleed for land or glory. They were Rome. Not its laws, not its senate, not its marble, but its people. Its brittle, brilliant, breakable spine. You whisper into the dark, "We were Rome." The flame flickers, then dies. The next morning, light sneaks in like a polite guest, golden and soft, brushing across your face, your walls, your memory. You rise slower than you once did. There's no hurry anymore, only rhythm. A pitcher of cool water, a splash to the face, the creak of leather sandals. You step outside and squint toward the temple of Jupiter. Bells are being rung, offerings made. Somewhere a goat isn't having a good morning, but your destination isn't divine, it's dusty. The archive. You cross the forum, nodding to familiar faces, the baker's daughter, who always smells faintly of honey, the scribe with ink-stained fingertips, the senator who pretends not to limp. Life moves in its loops, its rituals, its quiet denials of chaos. At the archive, the air smells like parchment and ambition. You pass through rows of scrolls and shelves and end up exactly where you meant, to the desk of Scribonius, the city's best and grumpiest historian. He looks up from his writing with narrowed eyes. "You're late." "I'm retired." "That's not a defense. That's a condition." You grin. "Still writing Cannae." Scribonius snorts. "Still fixing Cannae." Everyone wants to be heroic. No one wants to be confusing. You pull up a stool. "Want some help confusing things?" He sighs. "That's all you've ever done." But he gestures for you to sit, and you do elbow to elbow with a man trying to untangle a knot that stretches across centuries. On the table before him, maps of southern Italy inked over and over with formations, arrows, names half remembered and half invented. There's a pile of small wooden figures, Romans, Carthaginians, elephants, that he uses to reconstruct formations. You reach out and adjust one. "That's not where Varro stood," you murmur. Scribonius raises an eyebrow. "And you would know." You shrug. "I watched him ride in. He looked like a man trying not to sweat through his cuirass." There's a beat. Then Scribonius pulls the wooden soldier back, setting it in the new spot. "Fine. But if anyone asks, we blame it on Livy." You both laugh. And just like that, you're in it again. Not the battle, but the telling of it. The memory of it. The translation from blood to ink. Historians still argue. Scribonius mutters whether Hannibal planned that double envelopment or just adapted on the fly. You tap your fingers on the table. Does it matter? Of course it does. To you, maybe. But not to the men who died in it. He doesn't answer right away. Then he says quieter, "Maybe the stories are the only thing that outlasts the dead." There's silence between you, filled only by the scratching of a nearby scribe and the creak of the parchment drying racks. Scribonius slides a half-finished scroll your way. "Here." You read. "Tell me if this is honest." You scan the words. They are dramatic, precise, the kind of sentences sculpted, not spoken, but they feel sterile, like describing fire without heat. You look up. "You want honest?" He nods. "Then start with this. The dust was thick enough to eat, and some men did. Not because they wanted to, but because fear dries the throat faster than sun ever could." Scribonius's quill stills. That's too poetic. It's also true. He doesn't object this time. Instead, he listens. And you tell him, You tell him about the smell copper and sweat and sandal leather, about the way shields trembled not from impact, but from the arms holding them. You speak of the man next to you who prayed in Greek, though he was born in Capua, of the Carthaginian with a chipped tooth who looked as scared as you were. You speak, and Scribonius writes, and the story becomes more than a battle plan. It becomes a portrait of fear, of foolishness, of defiance, of Rome cracked but unbroken. At some point, a young apprentice peeks in holding a small box. Message from the governor's office, she says. Scribonius waves her off, annoyed at the interruption. But you call her over. She hands you the box. Inside, a bronze pin newly minted with a laurel engraving and a tiny inscription, Cannae. You frown. They're handing out commemorative jewelry now. Scribonius leans over to see. Better than forgetting it ever happened. You turn the pin over in your hand. It's finely made. Cold. Weighty for its size. Do you want it, you ask? He shakes his head. I prefer my tragedies unadorned. You leave it on the desk beside the wooden elephants, and you rise. Your knees pop. Scribonius doesn't comment, though he smirks. As you make your way out of the archive, the sun is higher now, casting sharper shadows between columns. The city is fully awake. Merchants shout, children run carts, rattle across stone. Rome pulses forward, one breath at a time. But for a moment you pause, because somewhere behind you, in a dusty archive, a man is writing. And this time, he's getting it right. You walk toward the field of Mars sandals, crunching against gravel sun, warming your shoulders. It's quieter out here. No clamor of the Forum, no clang of armor in the barracks. Just wind through tall grass and the occasional chirp of a lazy bird. You're not here to train, not anymore. You're here for bones. At the far end of the field, workers are preparing a site. There's a raised platform, some heavy stone blocks, a sculptor's tools. A small crowd begins to gather, mostly soldiers old and young, plus a few city officials who are already sweating through their tunics. You find a shady spot under a sycamore tree and watch. Today they're unveiling a statue. Not just any statue. The statue, Leonidas of Sparta, may have made a better poster boy for doomed resistance. But here in Rome, it's Hannibal who whispers into every general's ear, and the dead of Cannae who fill every military scroll with warnings in red ink. The marble figure is still draped in cloth. The sculptor, a bearded man with chipped fingernails, and the voice of a chain smoker stands beside it, like a proud father at a christening. Next to him, Paulus's surviving cousin, who looks about as pleased to be here as a man at his own tax audit. A clerk steps forward and clears his throat. Today we commemorate the Battle of Cannae, fought on the 2nd of August, 216 years before the birth of our Lord, when Rome suffered her darkest hour and planted the seeds of her greatest triumph. You wince slightly. That's optimistic. But fine, it's a ceremony. Let them polish the pain. The cloth is pulled. The statue stands taller than a man, arms stretched outward, one hand holding a broken spear, the other empty. Not in a pose of command, but surrender. Not Hannibal, not Pharaoh. Just a nameless Roman soldier. His face etched with resolve and exhaustion. His eyes looking slightly downward, as if still watching comrades fall around him. You feel something catch in your chest. They didn't make a statue of a hero. They made a statue of a survivor. The crowd is quiet. Even the birds pause. Then from the edge of the gathering, a group of children rush forward to lay garlands at the statue's base. One drops a small carved elephant, likely meant to be playful. It rests at the soldier's feet. You smile, it fits. Historians still argue, a familiar voice says behind you, whether we should memorialize defeats at all. You turn. Scribonius has arrived, panting slightly. You walked all the way out here. I needed the exercise, and I was promised a free wine ration. You point to the barrel behind the sculpture. There. But it's warm. He shrugs. So is Cannae. You sit together on a fallen column, watching as the crowd begins to drift away. The sculptor remains brushing dust from the folds of stone cloth with a reverence usually reserved for temple relics. Scribonius leans back on his elbows. Did you know some of the bones from the field were recovered? You nod. They tried to identify units by the way the bones were grouped. Formations in death. He looks at you sideways. That's what I'm writing next. You raise an eyebrow. A bone story. No, a legacy story. How a loss can echo longer than a victory. You nod. That's the part people forget. Hannibal won. And yet he lost the war. Eventually, you both sit in that quiet for a while. A breeze rustles the grass. A bee circles a goblet of unattended wine. You remember what it felt like after Cannae. The ride back. The silence of the survivors. The fear that Hannibal would march straight to the gates of Rome. But he didn't. Instead, he stayed. Waited. Planned. Some say he missed his moment. Others say he was buying time for allies to rise. Historians still argue whether Hannibal wanted to sack Rome or simply break its will. Either way, he didn't finish the job, and Rome recovered. You recovered. Your joints creak, sure. Your memories blur, but you are here. A woman approaches the statue, middle-aged, strong features. She carries a folded cloth, which she drapes across the statue's shoulders. It's not Roman standard. It's red and gold, the colors of Carthage. You glance at Scribonius. You think that's blasphemy. He shakes his head. I think that's honest. The woman turns and walks away, disappearing down the road to the river. The cloth remains, a reminder that every story has two sides, and sometimes both bleed the same. As the sun dips toward the horizon, you stand. Scribonius groans. Already. You help him up. Come on, let's get that warm wine. He grins. At least it won't be as bitter as history. You chuckle. Speak for yourself. Together you head toward the makeshift tavern by the olive trees, past the statue, past the silence, and into the hum of an evening that doesn't care who won or lost, just that someone remembered. You sip the wine slowly, letting its faint sourness fill your mouth, though truthfully, you're not even thirsty. The tavern beneath the olive trees is just a lean-to and a cracked counter, but there's shade, a breeze, and the gentle clink of wooden cups. Scribonius leans against a barrel, fanning himself lazily with a scroll. The midday heat's giving way to the soft gold of early evening. You stare out across the field, back toward the statue. A few figures still linger, young men, sketching an old soldier saluting, once, then walking away. You think of Hannibal again, though he's nowhere in stone here. Maybe they're afraid to remember him too clearly. Still his name lingers. Hannibal Barca, the man who crossed the Alps with war elephants, the one who turned Roman arrogance into puddles of red mud at Trebia, who shattered their confidence like dry bark at Lake Trasimene. And then Cannae. That perfect storm of tactics and terror. There's a strange comfort you realize in knowing someone outplayed Rome. Not forever, not in the end, but long enough to make the invincible bleed. And now he's just a name in dusty scrolls, an echo in quiet classrooms. His bones lie somewhere unknown, never found, never honored. Historians still argue whether Hannibal died by poison assassination or simple illness. It almost feels unjust for a man who shaped so much of your world to vanish without certainty. Scribonius mutters something under his breath. You glance over. What? He squints toward the statue. Do you think we'd remember Cannae if we'd won? You consider that. It's true. Victories blend together, blur into parades. Triumph arches, bragging rights passed down like old recipes. But defeats have teeth. They cling. They whisper in the dark before battles and hiss through command decisions long after. No, you say finally. We wouldn't. He nods. Then I suppose we owe Hannibal a thank you. You raise your cup in mock salute to our favorite nightmare. You both chuckle, then silence again. The sun dips behind the trees. Shadows stretch like lazy cats across the grass. Somewhere nearby, a shepherd's flute plays 3 clumsy notes. A lull settles over everything. It's time to go. You rise slowly back, cracking like an old roof beam. Scribonius grumbles, rolling his scroll and tucking it into his belt. As you walk together down the dusty path back toward the city, your mind drifts not to the battlefield, not to the politics or the statues, but to a younger version of yourself. One who marched out with so much certainty. One who thought courage was invincibility. That wasn't it. Courage was standing ground anyway. You remember one man, nameless now, who refused to retreat during the worst of it, just held the line beside you until he was gone. You never learned his name, but you see his eyes sometimes in dreams. Your sandals scuff the earth. A frog croaks lazily from a ditch. By the time you reach the city gate, the guards are changing shifts. A young recruit, barely bearded, offers a half salute and watches you pass. He has no idea what you've seen, what ghosts you carry, but maybe someday he'll hear your story. Maybe Scribonius will finally finish that scroll. Maybe, just maybe, someone will read it by lamplight and whisper. So that's why Cannae mattered. Because it did. It mattered in every training ground, in every council debate, in every dusty boot that marched into the unknown, carrying the lessons of those lost in that narrow circle of death. And still it echoes. Every time a general hesitates before a trap. Every time a student opens a map and sees that strange double hook formation. Every time someone whispers, "Remember Cannae." You step through the gate and into the flicker of torches. The streets are quiet, markets shuttered, homes glowing softly from within. No fanfare, no banners, just another Roman night. And somehow that's the most fitting tribute. Not glory, continuity. A city that endured because men once fell. Your bed creaks as you settle into it. The sheets are cool, the room quiet. A breeze drifts through the open window, carrying the faint scent of olive oil and dust. You close your eyes, and for just a moment, you're back there in the heat, in the roar, in the press of armor and fear and fate. But you're not afraid, not anymore, because you survived. And survival, in the end, is its own legend. As the last embers of battle dim and the dust of Cannae settles into silence, we pause not in fear, but in quiet reverence. The fields no longer echo with the clash of bronze or the cries of men, but with the soft hush of wind passing over forgotten graves. Where once tens of thousands stood shoulder to shoulder beneath the harsh sun, only olive trees remain, casting their patient shadows across the soil. Nature, in her gentle rhythm, has returned, covering over violence with vines and sorrow with seasons. Time, like a healer with slow hands, has smoothed the sharpness of memory. The swords are buried, the sandals have crumbled, the banners are nothing but pigment on brittle parchment. Yet still the lesson breathes more quietly now through the corridors of history, reminding us that even in brilliance, even ingenious destruction leaves no victors, only survivors who must carry the burden forward. And so we step back from the field, our footsteps lighter, our hearts a little quieter. Let the noise of the past remain behind us, wrapped in vellum and gold leaf. Let Hannibal's genius rest not as a threat or a wound, but as a caution in the language of whispers. Close your eyes now. Picture the plain once more, not filled with men, but with golden grass swaying gently beneath a silver sky. There is no sound here, save the occasional wingbeat of a bird or the sigh of the wind through ancient stones. The march is over for now. The field lies still, and history, ever watchful, closes its book for the night.